So, for the paper for this week, you were to write a 2 to 3 page paper talking about Bitcoins.
Mm-hmm.
What are they? Who made them? How long have they been around? What is Bitcoin mining? Will they stick around? Why or why not? Okay, so let's start off with the what are they? What are Bitcoins?
Oh, I looked up and it take this laptop like 2 months just to make like 1 cent just from like Bitcoin mining.
That's probably a true statement.
Yeah.
So what are they? What are Bitcoins? If you had to give a definition of them.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Okay. Tell me more.
That one side, it probably would work like from the same issue what we're using it, like a currency but in electronic form.
Okay.
With a more
so it's an electronic.
secure,
okay, it's electronic currency.
Yeah, with a more secure environment when the people can buy and sell without getting like hacked or like theft or something like that.
Okay. So at the heart of it, Bitcoin is a currency.
Yeah.
It's money. Okay. Well, what is money? If you had to define what money is, what would you say?
Something what you can get for your, like for your job.
Okay.
Or for your.
What do you use money for? We use it to buy things.
Buy things.
Right?
Buy, sell.
So money is anything that is of value to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? So you can go and you can buy dinner with US dollars. You could buy a house with some gold. You could probably find somebody who would be willing to sell a house for gold. Some people will perform certain services if you mow their yard, that kind of stuff. Maybe somebody, I don't know, does somebody else's laundry if the other person mows the yard, something like that. So is that money? So time is a form of currency as well, right? Okay. Now you said it's digital currency. So when we think about our money now, is that digital currency? US dollars.
No.
I mean,
this is
they all have serial
object.
numbers and stuff.
They all have serial numbers, but maybe something that's interesting is, so those of you who, here, let's use you as an example. So you went to Portillo's tonight, right? So the bill came up. Did you pay cash or did you swipe a credit card? Card. Okay. Do you think that's probably pretty common? Yeah. I mean, more and more people are swiping cards, correct? So when you buy something for US dollars with a credit card, isn't that essentially digital currency?
Yeah.
I mean, what do? You log into a website for your bank, and your bank account gives you a number of...
Let's say that centralized digital currency is what we're using right now as electronic one also, but decentralized digital currency is...
Okay.
Bitcoin has no
Maybe.
backing.
There's some truth to that. Well, they have backing, they just don't have the traditional backing. So for instance, what you were talking about is centralized.
Yeah.
So the US dollar, even though the way we've started using it is very much electronic, correct? I mean, we still carry around money, but the amount of money most of us have stored digitally somewhere is far more than the amount we typically carry around with us.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? We carry around money so that we can buy a hot dog or something like that if somebody doesn't take credit cards. But for everything else, we use a credit card. Okay, or leaving tips or something like that. So then that means the US dollar basically has become a digital currency, except for every now and then we throw a quarter into a parking meter or something like that. But even now, parking meters are beginning to have credit card swipes. All throughout Milwaukee, you pull into a spot, your spot is numbered, and you go to a nearby parking thingy and you swipe a credit card and you rent that spot, if you will. Go to Bayshore Town Center. Every single one of the parking meters around there, each individually has its own credit card swipe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything is moving towards digital, because that's how human beings like to work. It's convenient for us, so we don't have to carry around stuff, right? Even beyond that, the stuff has been going on, like when I'm at my country club golfing, I don't take my wallet with me out in the course. If I buy a soda or something like that out in the golf course, they put it on my account. At the end of the month, they bill my credit card. So my account has a balance, that's digital, it's a digital bill, and I pay for it with digital currency, and ultimately I need to make sure I keep enough money in an account that it covers the credit card bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you said centralized. So the U.S. dollar is centralized. It is governed by the U.S. government, just like the pound in the U.K. is governed by Parliament.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we have all sorts of different currencies all around the world that are centered around some sort of government. So the idea of a Bitcoin is that it's a decentralized digital currency. That is, there is no government that controls it. Why is that good? Why is that bad? What's the good aspects of a digital currency that does not have a government backing it?
The currency may not, currency may not default or something, or yeah.
Okay, so maybe your faith in the currency is less because there isn't a government behind it. Whether it's misplaced faith or not, maybe you feel better if it's the U.S. government or the UK or something like that behind the currency as opposed to the internet, right? Well, whatever that means. Now, a downside is if the U.S. government is controlling U.S. dollars, the U.S. government, if they need more dollars, what do? They print more money, right? It's their prerogative to do that.
But Bitcoin has like a limit.
Huh?
Bitcoin has a limit.
Correct, and there is nobody who just decides, let's print more money. I mean, there isn't a person. So Bitcoin is defined as the number of Bitcoins that will ever be in circulation. I think it's through the year 2170 or something like that. But it's
2140.
2140. Okay, so 2140 is the year. So there's a math formula that dictates how many Bitcoins will be in circulation at any point in time between now and 2140.
Yeah, every 10 minutes, 25 Bitcoin created. So,
and that's right now. I don't know when the next time period is. I think it just went from 50 down to 25. So I think it eventually goes down to 12.5, but that might not be for...
It's going to keep having every certain number of Bitcoins that exist.
Correct. Yep, and that's all part of this math formula. So it's already dictated. Nobody gets to decide, oh, we're a little short on cash, or we owe China a bunch of money. Let's hit those printing presses and start printing it off. And we've already seen this. I don't want to get into too much economics or politics and stuff like that in here, but as an example, China will not accept U.S. dollars for much of the debt the United States owes them. They only want their currency because the U.S. government just keeps printing off money. And it's not just the U.S. government. Lots of governments do this. It's their prerogative. So it's what's in it for them type thing. So the concept behind Bitcoin is that it's a decentralized currency that's governed by a math problem, right? That you can't change it. Nobody just says, okay, well, just this once, we're going to spill more Bitcoins into the field just because. It doesn't work that way. There's nobody who just gets to make a decision. But we'll kind of swing back to that here in a second if there's a weakness along those lines. Okay, so now you mentioned something about security. So Bitcoins are supposed to be more secure than normal currencies. In fact, Bitcoins are often called cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does it mean for a currency to be a cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency, it's like a signed currency, right?
What does crypto mean?
Yeah, just we are changing the form of the currency. Like if you're sending dollar to some other country, just we're like changing the form.
It's
Well,
encrypted for security.
It's encrypted.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually really encrypted at a ridiculous level. So Bitcoins are heavily encrypted using something called hashing algorithms. Now, a hashing algorithm is something is a one-way cipher. That means you take some arbitrary size input, squeeze it through some hashing algorithm. A popular one that maybe you've seen before is called MD5, and it comes out to be a fixed size output, but you can't reverse it. This is actually used for password authentication in many sites. MD5 being the hashing algorithm they use, message digest. So, for instance, you've probably recognized this before. If you forgot your password someplace, most places don't send you your password. Most places send you a link to reset your password, right? They validate who you are in whatever way possible, and then they send you a link to reset your password. Because they don't know what your password is. Your password is hashed, stored as its hashed value. Well, so then how can anybody ever get authenticated?
For each time.
Yeah, so let's say Amazon stores your password as a hashed value. So, whatever my password is at Amazon, they don't have the plain text version of it. They have my hashed password. When I log into my Amazon account, put my username, put my password in, how do they authenticate me? How do they know it's me? How do they make sure the password I typed in matches my password on record if they don't have my password?
Like when we like created the password, like they exchange the information. Like if you are buying something online, like they are exchanging the information.
Well, I'm just talking about logging into Amazon. So I go to Amazon, I put my username in, I put my password, I hit login. Those two pieces of information get sent to the Amazon servers. How do they make sure the password I entered is the password that I was supposed to enter?
Yeah, like it was already saved in the server. So yeah, once you put the same password, if it's matched, then only it will allow you to log in.
Are they matching? What are they matching?
They match encrypt again.
They hash the password I enter in.
Yeah.
So they never actually they don't have my password in plain text. They take my password I just typed in, they hash it, and then compare the two hash values. If these are the two hash values, if these two guys match, then this guy must have entered in the right password. Make sense? So that's how authentication works. And that's secure for the end user because now we know that Amazon's not storing our password in plain text.
What about all those companies that get a hold of people's passwords and usernames and stuff, like those hackers?
Yeah, a lot of times that happens through, a couple different ways here. So let's just say somebody hacked Amazon and they got a listing of all the usernames and passwords. They would have all the hashed passwords. Now, a hash being a one-way cipher, you cannot unhash it. So you can't get the password from that directly, but there's something called a dictionary attack. So, for instance, if you have a list of 1 million words that could potentially be passwords, what you can do is you can say, I'm going to take this word, hash it, does it match this? I'll take this word, hash it, does it match this? And as soon as you find matches, you know the word you just hashed is actually that person's password. So you can brute force and figure out what passwords are there, assuming somebody uses passwords that are words. So that's why a lot of places require you to have, uppercase letters and numbers and things like that in your
Special symbols.
Right, special characters that in your password so that it's strong against a dictionary attack.
But it will take for a hashed password to recover almost like I believe once I heard like a year or something for the.
To somebody brute force a
Yeah.
password? Well, it depends. And that's actually something we're going to talk about a little bit today, and that's this idea of distributed computing. So it would take maybe one computer 300 years. But what if you had 300 computers working on it? Now it's 1 year. What if you had 3,000 computers working on it?
Yeah.
So now it's
I'm getting that.
And there's a lot more than 3,000 computers, right?
Yeah,
So things are only as secure as the amount of horsepower somebody's willing to dedicate to cracking it. Okay, so security is a big concern in today's world, right?
Yep.
So having a currency that's built on security seems like it would be a good thing, right? We've all seen and we've heard about it. We've seen in movies about counterfeiting dollars, right? People get the nice printing presses, and now every single time we come out with new dollar bills and stuff like that, they have like holograms on them now that makes them harder and harder to counterfeit, but not impossible, just harder to counterfeit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like even with our modern currencies that have been around forever, we keep evolving them to the point that they are more and more secure, but not totally secure. We haven't even tried securing coins. I mean, is there really anything that if somebody works in a nice metal stamping factory or something like that could probably create quarters?
Yeah, because
things that look like quarters.
Doesn't make too much value.
Well, that's it. It doesn't make too much, but they add up.
Yeah.
If you had your whole van filled up with quarters, you could buy quite a bit of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like when you go to McDonald's, you hand them a quarter, they're not like, doing the weird light thing on it or anything like that. Nobody's trying to validate the quarters.
It will probably cost you more than creating that much quarters,
Oh, probably.
Yeah, for spending more. If you spend more for creating the less amount of money, so you probably don't do it.
So you're saying they're like self-policing.
Mm-hmm.
It would be too expensive to duplicate a quarter, so why do it?
Yeah.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what Bitcoins are. Who made them?
The website says developer was Satoshi Nakamoto,
Okay.
Japanese guy, but the most current version of it, it's not one person job. It was a group of the people who created this Bitcoin and just walk out from there, after just putting it on the system, because Satoshi also walked out into end of 2010 from this, Bitcoin.
Whoever Satoshi is.
Whoever.
Satoshi is actually a pseudonym. It's not the guy's real name.
No.
There is a person, nobody knows who it is,
okay.
whose pseudonym was Satoshi Nakamura. Okay? So,
he's from Japan?
well, he used a pseudonym that was Japanese.
Yeah, it might be not.
For all we know, he's from New Jersey.
Mhm.
Yeah. Who knows? That's intriguing in and of itself. That the person who created the cryptocurrency, well, now first of all, the person who created Bitcoin used a pseudonym.
Mhm.
The idea of a cryptocurrency is actually based on a paper that was presented. It was a computer science research paper years ago.
96,
Yep.
96. Yeah, I read, but I did not include it.
That talked about the concept of a fully digital, fully encrypted currency. The concept of it.
Mhm.
Then you had some guy who took that research and implemented the concept that we have today called Bitcoins. Now, even beyond that, there's a whole bunch of other cryptocurrencies out there now, right?
Mhm.
Competition, if you will. You have Litecoins and Dogecoins and Nature coins, and there's like 300 of them. I mean, there's tons and tons of different crypto coins that people are mining today, whatever. But Bitcoins is their top dog, right? So the Bitcoin is the Major League Baseball of crypto coins. Everybody else is AAA or AA or Little League, that kind of stuff. Okay. So really the correct answer of who made them is we don't know. Yeah, it's not clear who made Bitcoins. They're not trying to claim anything about it now. So who knows? Just there was a guy or a girl possibly that used a pseudonym. And for all we know, it might have even been a group that used the pseudonym.
Yeah, the main thing is this thing makes Bitcoin a little weak because of if you don't know who did that, you probably will, afraid of maybe they might be do something else that they can just cancel that or, create a new Bitcoins inside the system and nobody know about it and just, what I mean? That's, nobody knows who did this. Nobody knows.
That's true, but isn't that actually a statement of strength for what Bitcoin's trying to be? They're trying to be a decentralized currency.
Yeah.
So literally, by not having a creator, nobody has control over Bitcoins.
Yeah.
Not the U.S. government, not this Satoshi Nakamura guy. Nobody has control over it. There's nobody. I mean, take another computer science type thing, Linux. We've heard of the Linux operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the guy who originally created Linux was a guy named Linus Torvalds. And so he modified an old version of Unix called Minix and created the Linux kernel. And Linus, that was named after him. Well, for years and years and years, he had a lot of control over the Linux kernel community. He was a celebrity in the Linux world, right? Now he's taken a back seat now, and other people have taken it over and that kind of stuff. He's gotten older, but the point is that because his name was attached to it, he had a lot of clout with decision making regarding Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Where now with something like Bitcoin, there is nobody with clout because there is nobody. So that I'm not sure it's this point of weakness or strength, but it seems to me if one of their goals is for it to be a decentralized currency, the fact that there literally isn't even a person we can point to and say he made this seems like a good thing. Somebody will come out of the woodwork, 50 years from now, whether Bitcoins make it or don't make it, whatever, it'll be just like Elvis, 50 people will come out saying that, I created Bitcoins or something like that. Okay. How long have they been around?
From 2009 January.
Okay. Yep. So several years. I think a lot of people from all the Bitcoin. The reason I had you look at this is first of all, it's very related to computer science and IT, especially when we start talking about the distributed network aspect of this. And we're going to do some distributed programming today. I think a lot of people look at it from the buzzword perspective. It's in the news a lot today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people think it's very recent. 2009, I mean, it's
pretty much, yeah,
it's 4 years ago.
5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around for 4.5 years. I mean, it's been around for a good period of time, right? Well, it'll be January.
5 years. January 2000.
Will be 6 years.
Yeah, almost
Yeah.
6 years. Yeah.
So 5.5 years.
Yep.
So it's been, I mean, that's been around for a period of time, right? Okay. So this didn't just come out last week. It's just is becoming more and more popular, so people are starting to talk about it, right? Okay. So what is Bitcoin mining?
Yeah, the Bitcoin mining is using your laptop or computer or whatever server, whatever processor you have, help to use your processor within the system of Bitcoin and just solve the problem of the math when they're sending some amount of money to someone else throughout your processor. It will be the one path of millions paths.
Okay.
Throughout the system. So
the concept is this: if we're swiping your credit card at Portillo's,
yep.
And so you swipe that credit card, somebody's processing that transaction, whether it's Chase Bank or whoever, some bank or even some authorized.net is processing that payment.
Mm-hmm.
So and once that payment is approved, so you swipe your card there, the thing comes back and says approved. That means that transaction's now been approved. So now it goes to the bank or the credit card place. The credit card place then sends money to the right people and all that stuff. So, but that's governed by the Federal Reserve Bank. So all these banks like Chase and stuff like that they all need to be part of this conglomerate and agree on standards and all this stuff. Well, because Bitcoin is anonymous, and there is no backing like that, well, somebody needs to govern the transactions, correct? If we want them to be secure. Otherwise, we just say, I'm sure it's fine. Yeah. So that's not going to fly for Bitcoin. So somebody needs to govern these transactions. That's where mining comes in. So there is this peer-to-peer network that is the Bitcoin network. So if I were to send you money with Bitcoins, I send you that money to a unique address. We'll come back and talk about this here in a second. But I send you this money. And that transaction gets loaded into what's called a block. Okay, every 10 minutes there's a new block. Every 10 minutes there's a new block. So inside this block, there's a bunch of transactions that get thrown in there. Okay, so that's when you do a Bitcoin transaction, it should get approved in less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes or less is the idea. So in any case, what happens is that block, once the previous block is done after that 10-minute period, that block gets released to the wolves, if you will, the miners. And what the miners do is they start going through that block, solving hard math problems to validate those transactions. And what they're doing is they're making sure that the same Bitcoin does not get spent more than one time and things like that. In the Bitcoin network, I think the standard is that a single transaction must be validated 6 times in order to be approved. But most transactions are usually validated over 40 times. Almost by accident because of the sheer number of miners that are out there. Okay, so punchline is, to simplify mining, is if you didn't have Bitcoin mining, there could not be Bitcoin transactions. The miners are required for it. Now, as it stands right now, mining is kind of a geeky, fun thing to try. Then it goes to more of a hobbyist thing. And it's even starting to become an enterprise type thing with cloud mining places. So you're starting to get places like Chase Bank and stuff like that, places that have invested in millions of dollars worth of equipment for doing this mining. So even though somebody like me is participating in the mining network, I'm doing such a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the work compared to let's just take Slush Pool as an example. That's one of the big pools. Well, actually, let's go past that. Let's say, what is it? Ghash.io, I think is the name of it. They have their own equipment. They're doing, I don't know, a zillion
transaction.
A zillion petahashes per second of these solving math problems. They're doing a lot of math every single second, more than any individual could do because they have all this equipment. So they're doing, let's say, 90% of the work. Okay, so that leaves only a little bit for the fish, the smaller fish out there. But in any case,
Western Union also use the same concept, I think. So yeah, they'll approve the money in 10 minutes, like any part of the world.
Sure, right. Because it needs to be validated for the 2 points, but they don't use anywhere near the level of encryption that Bitcoin does. But you're right. I mean, the idea is with Western Union is the 2 endpoints have to agree that money leaves something here, money enters something here. That way, this money doesn't get duplicated and it's in 2 places at once. That's the point of Western Union.
Yeah, but still, they'll generate the code. We have to
Sure.
use the same code at the other end.
Yep. Now, so the idea is that if Bitcoin mining was not happening, Bitcoin transactions could not happen. Correct? So mining is kind of a cool thing that you can try. It's easy to try. You can set up. Lauren says she tried to set up a miner on her MacBook Air.
I looked up the MacBook and what it can do and stuff, and then I typed into those calculator things and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I would only get this one.
Sure. So Bitcoin mining started off as people using their CPUs to solve these math problems to validate Bitcoin transactions. Well, as the number of Bitcoin transactions went up, we needed either A, more miners, or B, those miners needed to be able to do more math problems in a smaller period, in that same period of time, because we were having to validate more transactions. So that's when they started using the GPUs, the graphics processing units, through a technology called OpenCL. Your graphics card in your laptop or your desktop computer is has a specialized processor on it that's very, 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 very good at doing floating point math.
20 times better than the regular.
Your CPU in your computer knows how to do a lot of things pretty well. So it's maybe you say jack of all trades, master of none. The GPU, graphics card, is very, very, very good at doing graphics-related math. So a lot of floating point math. Well, even then, So let me just give you the idea. So like on this laptop right here, if I were to run a Bitcoin miner, I would be running at about 170 mega hashes a second.
170, it's pretty good.
170 mega hashes per second. Now, the best graphics card that's on the market today, let's say it's about an $800 graphics card, that guy would get about 700 mega hashes per second.
700?
700 mega hashes per second. And that's for an $850 graphics card that's just draining power. Because remember, you got this thing plugged into the wall.
Yeah.
So you have to pay a power bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so Lauren, you're making your penny per year, but it costs $240 to make that penny in power bill. Not a profitable endeavor is the punchline there. Graphics cards use a lot of power.
Yeah.
So even though I'm getting, with that expensive graphics card, I'm getting 700 mega hashes a second, it might not be worth it when you consider the number of people that are mining today and things like that. You might not be able to make enough back to make your electrical bill worth it. Get what I'm saying? It might be one of the things that you say, oh, I am spending $50 a month. I'm losing $50 a month doing this.
To getting like $20 a month.
Well, you might be getting $70 a month in Bitcoins, but spending $50 per month. Well, no, let's say you get $30 per month in Bitcoins, but spending $70 per month in power, something like that.
Yeah.
You're upside down. So then they came out with something called an ASIC, ASIC. It's a specialized device. So you go from your CPU, which is very generalistic problem solving, to your GPU, which is much more domain specific. If we think back to our programming language stuff from 535, we have general purpose programming languages, we have general purpose then we have domain specific programming languages. So your graphics card is a domain specific piece of hardware for solving graphics type problems. Well, an ASIC is even more domain specific. It's specifically built for solving Bitcoin math problems. So for instance, you can go out onto Amazon right now and like for $22, I think it's called Antminer U2 is the name of the thing. $22, you can get a little USB stick. It looks like a jump drive, USB drive. And that thing can do 2 gigahashes per second. So
How much?
2 gigahashes per second.
No way.
So for $22, you can process 3 times the number of math problems per second that $850 graphics card can do. And you only use less than 2 volts of electricity. Far more energy efficient and 3 times faster. Does that make sense? So we're getting more and more specialized. Now, the thing is, this isn't any different. I mean, what I find fascinating about the Bitcoin stuff, besides it being very technology friendly and stuff like that, it really shows us history repeating itself. Computers. So when I got my first computer, I had an Epson computer. Okay, and it was running at 4 megahertz. A 4 megahertz computer. When I was in high school, I got a 486 DX2 66 megahertz computer. We had to wait for the chip to get released. And this thing was just supposed to be just blazing fast, 66 megahertz. A year later, we had 133 megahertz, then 233 megahertz, 512 megahertz. Now, what do we have? Well, you can go out and you get your Intel Core i7, which is a much newer architecture than those. You're not even comparing apples to apples anymore. A 1 gigahertz chip running architecture A is not necessarily anywhere near as fast as a 1 gigahertz chip running architecture B, because those architectures make a lot of difference in terms of taking those clock speeds and turning it into performance. But today you go out and get a Core i7 processor. Maybe it's running at 3.04 gigahertz, right? But 4 of them. A lot of them are quad cores. We also have 6 core ones. Then you can do dual 6 core. So you have 12 cores. So you have 12 individual cores, each running at 3 gigahertz. So you start seeing what's happening. But actually what's interesting over the last several years is our processing power has not been doubling every year like it was for a while. Now we just keep adding more cores. We can't get it to go any faster because of heat. Things start melting, right? So we start adding more cores, which then causes us to only benefit with problems that can be divided up into multiple pieces. We're going to be doing some stuff with threads today. Now, so in any case, when you look at the history of technology, we've seen our performance double and triple and quadruple in a very, very short period of time, and we're seeing the exact same thing in the Bitcoin market.
The Antminer YouTube, the one that's like $17 or something. It's 2,000 megahashes per second.
Yeah,
and
2 gigahashes, right? Same thing.
yeah, and it'll get you 7 cents per day.
Awesome. Now,
Missing the current difficulty factor in exchange, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about this is, let's just look over the past year. In the past year, Bitcoins have gone up in value. A year ago, a Bitcoin was about 127 US dollars for one Bitcoin. In November,
1,000 something.
was over almost $1,200. I think over $1,200. Now they're down to around $500 per Bitcoin. Okay, and well, that's around 500, right?
Yeah.
So what's going to be interesting is I have a prediction. So everybody remember this. See if I've predicted this correctly. I predict somewhere in, I'll give myself a little wiggle room. I'll say by the end of July. I actually think it'll be before that, but let's say the end of July. I think there'll be a very, very big spike upwards for Bitcoins.
Why?
I'm about to tell you. I think Bitcoins will go to $2,000 a piece between now and July. For the same reason that they went to $1,200 in November. This gets back to what we were talking about a little bit ago about Bitcoin mining. It's a requirement that miners keep mining in order to support Bitcoin transactions, correct? Well, miners are using electricity. And how do they get paid? They get paid in Bitcoins for their role in the mining process. Okay? Now, it's fractions of a fraction of a fraction of a Bitcoin. But wherever it is, the value of a Bitcoin has to outweigh the amount they're spending in time and electricity in order for it to be worth it for them to keep doing it. So we keep coming out with new technology. Technology, like we just gave that example, that Antminer does 3 times the performance of an $850 graphics card at a fraction of the power. And I'm telling you that Antminer thing is a piece of crap by today's standards. It's a cheap, nice way to get into it. But, I mean, there's another device. Same company makes it. It's called the Antminer S1. The Antminer S1 does 180 gigahashes per second. Overclock 200 gigahashes per second.
I'll get you $6.47 per day.
Per day.
How
Okay?
much?
$6.47.
It's worth
Yep.
it.
And that thing's around $500.
Yeah, 600.
The retail, if you buy it from the company, you pay for it in Bitcoins. I think it's something like 0.8 Bitcoins, which would put it right under $500. But if you don't have Bitcoins, you have to buy it on the alternate market like eBay or something like that. You can get one for between $450 and $600, I would say. So I have 2 of those.
You have 2 of those?
I have 2 of those.
Cool.
But so, I mean, yeah, this stuff just fascinating. I'm doing a bunch of research on Bitcoin stuff right now. Yeah, so I have 2 of those, and I think I got both of them shipped for maybe $960. So they shipped out of California. I think I got them on eBay. So 2 of them plus shipping. So I paid
$1,000.
$480 a piece, $1,000. With the power supply, it was $1,000. So I'm running it off an 850 watt power supply. So each of those takes up about 400 watts of power, as opposed to 2 watts of power for that little guy. But you're getting a lot of performance out of 400 watts of power for, it's doing 80 times what what that other thing does in one piece of equipment. So you're not having to rely on them being networked together. Now, if you could somehow get all those other guys to spool together and not overheat and all that stuff, then you could maybe do a little bit better per. But when you consider the price of the S1, it's doing 80 times the performance for not 80 times the price, right? 80 times the price would be 80 times $25. A lot more money than $450.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in any case, the speed of these devices keeps going up and up and up and up, which causes, Lauren was just talking about the difficulty rating. See, everything about Bitcoins revolves around, which is I find kind of fascinating too, revolves around transactions being approved within 10 minutes. So as we have more and more transactions going into each block, more and more miners running faster and faster and faster equipment, the difficulty level of validating a Bitcoin transaction goes way, way, way up, which makes it even more secure. Because now, if we had today's hashing power, the computation power that's on the Bitcoin network today, and we were validating Bitcoins from last year, we would validate Bitcoin transactions in 30 seconds instead of 10 minutes. I'm just throwing a number out there, but it's probably not horrifically off because it's so much faster today than it was a year ago. So rather than just doing it faster, what they've said is let's make it more secure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep that 10-minute thing in place. And let's say that now to validate something is, there's major computational work there to validate something. Okay? Well, so in order for Bitcoins to be, to stay around, you need miners. And in order for miners to stay around, it needs to be profitable for them. Now, I mentioned that I think there's going to be a spike in Bitcoin value between now and the end of July. There is going to be a release here in the next couple of months of a bunch of new hardware that are in the 20 nanometer class of Bitcoin mining hardware, ASICs. So, for instance, there's one that I'm looking at from a place called, I think it's called Rubiks Cube. It's a 5 terahash device for, I think it's like $3,200, and it runs on about 800 watts of power. So 5 terahashes versus 400 gigahashes that I'm doing now.
There's several different Miners Cube ones. Are you getting the one that they're all coming out in May? Are you getting the one that costs $4,000, $6,000, or $9,000?
The one that's 5 terahashes, I think it's the least expensive.
Yeah, there'll be 6.5 mega
6.5 Bitcoins.
Bitcoins, so they'll be like over.
Yeah, it's like $3,200 or something like that.
Yeah.
But in any case, that part of it's not important. The part that's important is today, one of the very, very popular miners is the Antminer S1 that can do, one of them can do 180 gigahashes per second.
What does it mean that it's 20 nanometers?
It's the architecture. It's so they're fitting more and more chips on a smaller and smaller surface and cooling it to the point that they can stay.
Why are they cooling it so well?
I don't know what technology they have in there. Some kind of liquid cooling or something or other. But it's the same thing. The same reason why processors keep getting faster and faster, and also the same reason why processors aren't getting faster today instead of our computers, because heat is the enemy. These chips get really, really hot. You would not want to put your finger on a running processor. It's hot, okay? But there's hot, and then there's the point when the chip malfunctions because it gets so hot. So as these processors get smaller and smaller and smaller, you can fit more and more and more of them on a single board. You can fit more and more hashing power into the same footprint, blah, blah, blah. But in any case, what I'm saying is there's going to be a big jump in the speed that we're hashing over the next several months. Huge jump. And because of that huge jump, you're going to see a lot more computational power on the mining network. So we're going to be mining things much more quickly than we were before. Well, the difficulty will go way up, but at the same time, power consumption is also going to be going up. So I think Bitcoins have to go up in value in order to support that. That's my guess. So I mean, don't go and make investments based on this. I'm just, kind of speaking out loud there along those lines. But, that's what I think will happen because the amount of the equipment is about to hit another spike similarly to what it did before November last year when the 28 nanometer stuff came out. That, like the S1 and those things that are running at, 180 gigahashes. I mean, 180 gigahashes is a ridiculous speed a year ago. Today, it's still pretty cool. But it's like high-end hobbyists. Like nobody's like drooling if you're running at 180 gigahashes.
One question about Bitcoin. Look, there is other companies like Litecoin and other coins like.
Yeah, they're called altcoins.
Altcoins, yeah. Those coins also do the same thing.
They're all crypto coins.
Yeah.
So all of these are crypto coins, just like you have the US dollar and you have rupees and you have the yen, the Japanese yen, the Chinese yen. You have all these different currencies. There's also all sorts of different cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin being the premier one. But then you have alternative Bitcoin currencies. They're called alt currencies, like Litecoins and Doja coins are the kind of the two big ones, let's just say. So there are miners who mine those because just like Bitcoins, people, you need the miners in order to verify those transactions. Well, why are miners mining those? Well, because they can get a larger piece of the profit. Bitcoin has become so prevalent at this point that if you're an individual mining, to make a lot of money doing it is very difficult. You have to invest a lot of your own cash into doing it. So I think you could probably make quite a bit of money if you dropped $5,000 or $10,000 into Bitcoin mining equipment as an individual and then kept upgrading your equipment every 6 months. I think that's the business plan, is you get the best you can get today and every 6 months get the new best and sell your old stuff. So there'll always be somebody who wants your old stuff. Those are the hobbyists. The people who can't afford it today can afford it in 6 months because you'll be buying something new. Is kind of the idea there. So I think you can make decent money that way, but most people don't just have $10,000 laying around to drop on some hardware to say, I want to go mine Bitcoins, right? I mean, that's it's an extremely high risk type of endeavor. It's cool from a technology perspective. Okay, but I mean, it's extremely high risk. I mean, there is a very, 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 very good chance that Bitcoins become worthless.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
But that it's a high risk thing. The U.S. dollar is not going to become worthless anytime soon.
Yeah.
At least not inside the United States. It's already worthless outside the United States, but inside the United States, the U.S. dollar is sticking around because that's our currency. We're used to using it. Everybody accepts it. Blah blah blah.
The main idea at the end, you had a question about Bitcoin sticks around or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to answer about that question, which I was after reading too much information about Bitcoin, I was thinking that the big transaction, like a million zillion transaction, which made by the government to other governments, which makes like big giant corporation like banks.
Yep.
But not throughout the Bitcoin, which is probably like a fewer amount, like a million won't be like big amount to make a transaction between Bitcoin, but because of that, and plus the Bitcoin responsibility, there's nobody responsible for Bitcoin. Like if the miners, who knows, in the future, they think that they don't need it anymore, and they want to go throughout to the other competitors. So Bitcoin would be worthless, as you said. So that's why.
Well, but the same thing is true with U.S. dollars. If 2/3 of America decided, okay, well we don't believe in the U.S. dollar anymore, we're switching over to gold, or we're switching over to the euro, or something like that, you'd have the same exact problem.
That probability of being that U.S. economy, U.S. people like refusing the dollar, the probability of it like very low, then refusing of the Bitcoin.
Oh, absolutely, because dollars have been around a lot longer. I'm sure in the early days of the U.S. dollar, people weren't necessarily sure this was going to work. Because in those days, people were used to bartering with gold and bronze and silver and, gems and stuff like that. That's how people bartered. That's how they or exchange services, whatever it is. So
I don't get how like a Bitcoin is related to like its US dollar amount. Like how does that change?
well, it changes because it's, Bitcoins, there's also exchanges that'll do Bitcoins as far as euros and things like that. It's what is one Bitcoin? If I have US dollars and somebody else has a Bitcoin, what is that person willing to sell a Bitcoin
But I
for
don't
in
get
terms
how
of US
that's-
dollars?
I don't get how that's determined. Is there an equation
Yeah.
for that?
No, there isn't an equation. These are actual real people.
But I don't get
So it's just like eBay. So let's say that every one of us in here has a PlayStation 4 that we want to sell on eBay. And then the people in the classroom down the hall, they are all people who want to buy PlayStation 4s. So we all put our thing up on eBay. That's our ask price. Okay, so I put mine up for 450. You put yours up for 451. You put yours up for 750. B puts his up for 399, trying to undercut everybody. So it's that type of thing. You have a bunch of people who are selling Bitcoins. You have a bunch of people who are buying Bitcoins, and usually the people who want to buy and the people who want to sell are not a part. They're
But who decides?
well, it's whoever makes the deal. So then this guy gives a little, 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 and then there's a sale. And whenever that sale happens, that's the current value of a Bitcoin. The Bitcoin just went for that amount. It's not a who decides. It's two people made a deal.
That's why it's changing its value every I don't know, hour or so.
Well, let's say at any point in time you have 1,000 people who are willing to sell a Bitcoin or some number of Bitcoins, and you have 1,000 people who are willing to buy Bitcoins. Well, the people who are willing to buy and the people who are willing to sell, if they can't agree on a price, then no Bitcoins will be transacted. There won't be a transaction. But when they do agree on a price, that's a value. That's the going rate for a Bitcoin that second. If 1 minute later, people are willing to pay a little more, Bitcoins go up. If 1 minute later, people are willing to pay a little less, Bitcoins go down.
Can anyone sell Bitcoins?
If you had Bitcoins,
Yeah.
anybody can sell a Bitcoin.
The thing is,
This is no different than dealing with stocks. Like if you have a share of Apple, if I own a share of Apple computer, I might be willing to sell that share of Apple for, I think the going rate of Apple is also somewhere in the $500 range right now, $547 or something like that.
Bitcoin's like a complicated stock market.
no, it's not about.
Not even a complicated stock market. It's just like the stock market, except the stock market, you have established New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. You have established exchanges for buying and selling stock. And people, if I want to buy Apple, I go through E-Trade, who then has people on the floor of the stock market. I say, I want to buy Apple stock. I want to buy 100 shares of Apple. And the person from E-Trade, they go and they buy me 100 shares of Apple, the best price they can get it for, which is going to be, within several cents of what the current going rate says it is at the time it actually transacts. Bitcoin is the exact same thing, except it doesn't happen at established trading places like New York Stock Exchange. It happens, there's like 3 or 4 different kind of popular exchanges, where people can go and buy and sell Bitcoins online. These aren't established, so it's as far as you can trust them type thing. Are they just as trustworthy as New York Stock Exchange? Quite possibly, but they're not anywhere near as established. But it's really the same exact thing, same exact model.
The main issue of what I'm thinking, if the Bitcoin produces every 10 minutes 25 Bitcoins, this automatically build up by the main system, right? Or
there is no main system. So what happens is every 10 minutes, whoever won that block, it's like a competition. When somebody finds a block, it's like a Rubiks Cube. So when somebody does all the math to unlock a block, they find that block, they win. In that 10-minute game, they won 25 Bitcoins. If that's an individual person, that's like hitting the lottery, right? 25 Bitcoins times, well, not quite the lottery, but you get what I'm saying. 25 Bitcoins times $500 a piece, that's a pretty good payday. And you get it's split amongst you. Well, chances of one person running one of these $22 things off Amazon and hacking, cracking Bitcoins or whatever, and them actually being the winner of the 25 Bitcoins is
I thought everyone just gets like a portion of like this one.
they do in a pool. So what I'm saying is, let's say I go out to Amazon, I buy this 2 gigahash per second thing for $22, and I decide, you know what? I like my chances. I'm going to mine Bitcoins myself. So you just plug yourself into the Bitcoin network, and you're searching, just like these guys that have, 5 petahashes of stuff. You're up against those guys. It's like me on foot versus a 747. Okay? It's worse than that. It's like an ant versus a 747, and it might be worse than that. Okay, but you think you're going to be lucky because you potentially, highly unlikely, you potentially could unlock that that block before the monster over there does. You probably won't, but if you could, you would get the 25 Bitcoins for that 10-minute period. The alternative is you can go and join a pool. So a pool is a named entity where they collectively put all their computation power into a big pool, and they work on that block. So if the pool wins that competition, the pool gets to 25 Bitcoins, and then they disseminate those amongst all the people who were competing in the pool based on performance. There's a couple different ways they deliver them, but that's when she's looking at these calculators. You would usually go into some pool.
So if you don't join a pool and you just do it on your own, you could have your thing running with a really powerful thing, but say you don't actually win it, you just don't ever get any Bitcoins.
You would get 0 Bitcoins and just spend electricity. Is the possibility. The same thing's true in the pools, but the idea is that the pool, you have the bigger pools that, for instance, like the slush pool, they win about 25% of the time.
Oh, that's good.
But you have another, and the slush pool is like the 4th or 5th biggest or something like that. One of the biggest pools is, I think it's BTC Guild, I think is the name of it. I think maybe they're the 2nd biggest pool. They win like over 50% of the time. But there's also more people in the pool. So you can win 50% of the time and have a similar share of the Bitcoins as if you won 25% of the time out of less people, that kind of stuff. So, but the idea is if you did it on your own, you probably would never win.
Yeah.
Get what I'm saying? So at least going in a pool, you get some sort of consistent type income over time. That's the kind of calculator she's doing, where she would make a penny a year or something like that before power bill. Okay, so just kind of finished up this discussion so we can get on to the stuff we're going to do today. Are Bitcoins going to stick around? They've already been around for 5 years.
More likely will be stick around, just for having like a smaller amount of the working force payments, and plus you can anonymously payments.
Okay.
Like, it's not fully anonymous, but from the million transactions which you're doing a day, who will be looking for you?
Oh, it really is actually anonymous.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there's something called the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So the blockchain, I think, is currently about 7.5 or 8 gigabytes in size. And the blockchain is literally every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever happened. And it's publicly available. Every one of us in here could go online and download the 7 gigabyte blockchain. And you would see every single Bitcoin transaction that's occurred ever. But Bitcoin transactions happen between a public key and another public key. So it's like a jumbled up hash value.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the humans that are attached to those. You don't know that it was Mike Littman sending a Bitcoin to Lauren. You don't know that. You know it was this crazy number sending a Bitcoin to this crazy number. How many Bitcoins? 1. Something like that. So it is anonymous in that respect. Beyond that, it also acts a lot like the Ethernet network protocol, where it's a bus-based protocol where each network card has its own MAC address, right? So how many of you have had the networks class in the MSIT program thus far? I think it's 840 or 540, depending if you do the online, the in-class. Well, you'll learn about the Ethernet protocol in there. And so all these computers in here are all on an Ethernet network, and each of these computers has a network interface card in it, an Ethernet card. And that Ethernet card has a MAC address That's a unique identifier on the network. Okay? Well, it's supposed to be a unique identifier in the world. But you can spoof a MAC address, so it becomes a security thing. But let's just forget about that security layer thing for a second. Just say every one of these machines has a unique MAC address in the entire world. Well, as data is flowing along the bus, that is the Ethernet, it's just like a highway. So data is flowing up and down this highway in this room. Each of these network cards is kind of like dipping into the highway and picking up packets as they fly by and saying, is this one for me? Is it addressed to my MAC address? If not, throw it back. Is this one for me? So they're basically just fishing in there and finding things that belong to them and taking them. Well, the same thing works for the Bitcoin wallets. When you hook up a Bitcoin wallet, you go in and it goes and figures out all the transactions that belong to you and brings them in and out of your wallet so that in the end, a Bitcoin can only live in one place at a time. It may have traveled to 50 different wallets in the process, but right now it's in one wallet. Does that make sense? So it really is anonymous. Even the wallet doesn't know it belongs to Mike Lippman. It just knows the wallet has this unique identifier, this MAC address, if you will. So, all right, so you think Bitcoins will stick around?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
What else? What do you think? Habib, are they sticking around?
Yeah.
You why? Why do you think they're going to stick around?
Yeah, like anyone can make the transaction. So
Another main idea that the Bitcoin will be accepted not only in one country, which gives very good idea of like currency thing.
Yep.
Now it's like international currency. I would say because some countries you say China do not accept Chinese worker or something do not accept the dollar. They accept Bitcoin or
Sure.
something like that. That's way Bitcoin can survive. So, which is pretty good idea of the hiring for Bitcoin for someone on big projects or some like areas. But
so one interesting difference is, for instance, most car companies will not accept credit card as payment over a certain value, because when you swipe a credit card, the place you're swiping it with is paying a processing fee based on the amount you're swiping, right? Because they're essentially giving that company a loan, hoping that the person who has the credit card pays their bill eventually, or they get the interest on it or whatever. So if somebody swipes a credit card for $10,000, there might be a pretty substantial processing fee for that $10,000 credit card swipe. Bitcoin is blind to that. Every single Bitcoin transaction is free. You could have a higher priority transaction where it costs, something very small to make it, happen in less than 10 minutes or something like that. It squeezes in the previous block or something. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but in any case, it's not based on the amount of Bitcoins that were transferred, though. So if you were to transfer 1 million Bitcoins versus 1 Bitcoin, the cost to do that transfer is the same. Does that make sense? So that's kind of a benefit. In fact, there's a famous car company that accepts Bitcoins. Anybody know what, in your research, did you find out what that car company was? Tesla Motors.
Oh.
Tesla accepts Bitcoins. You can buy a Tesla car with a Bitcoin, or with many Bitcoins. Not 1 Bitcoin, but many of them.
Yeah, many of them. Tiny $1,000.
Yeah, well, that's probably their starting model. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be very interesting. But it's this constant struggle. The thing I go back and forth with is, Bitcoins sound very, very, very good on paper. But there's a lot of things that sound very good on paper that haven't worked out. One of them that comes to mind is communism. On paper, communism sounds pretty good. Like, hey, everybody has their talents, so we're all going to do what we're talented at. We all get paid the same. That doesn't really work for humans. We're too greedy. Brain surgeons think they should get paid more than carpenters. But on paper, it sounds very fair, correct? But it just didn't work out. Communism has certainly failed. It's shunned, and everybody's moving away from it. Blah blah So will Bitcoins be a similar experiment? It's not like communism was around forever. It's still around, just less so now than it was before. So this idea that Bitcoins have already been around for 5 years doesn't necessarily tell us that they're here to stay, right? They could certainly still fail. So there might be a concern there that just because they sound great on paper doesn't necessarily mean they'll work out. Perhaps having a government back a currency is a necessary evil. I don't think anybody sits around and says, "Oh, well, we trust the American government, completely to handle our money, blah blah blah." Well, we don't. We think that they're going to be corrupt and things like that. But at the same time, that still might be way better than the alternative. It's that type of thing. So, I guess time will tell. An interesting kind of swing on this that maybe you read about in your research is that the country of China is fairly high on Bitcoins. You might see them really adopt the Bitcoin as one of their main currencies. United States government, not high on Bitcoins at all. One big reason. Transactions that happen in Bitcoins can't be taxed until you turn it into a dollar.
Okay.
As soon as you turn a Bitcoin into 500 US dollars, then the government can tax it as income. But until that happens, it's not a taxable thing. It's just like you're trading somebody popsicle sticks. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, U.S. government doesn't like that. They would prefer to tax stuff as much as they can. Rightly so. I mean, so I'm not trying to demonize them. It's every government's that way, right? They all tax them. The same thing happens with healthcare and that kind of stuff. Canadians pay 3 times the taxes that the American citizens pay, but they've had centralized, socialized healthcare for years. It costs a lot of money. Healthcare is expensive, so so every government wants to tax the heck out of it. It's just sometimes that's the price you pay for the services the government renders and that kind of stuff. So so it'll be interesting because it almost is like Bitcoins are the anti-currency. You're almost like part of the rebellion, if you will. And it'll be interesting to see if something that sounds good on paper really translates into something that people will end up believing in and trusting. So we'll see. I tend to believe that they will stick around. Because I think the world we live in today is different than the world we lived in historically. But I'm going to say 51% to 49%. It's a pretty close edge, I think, at this point.
The main thing is their system crashed 2 times.
And there's already been corruption, though. I mean, one of the main exchanges, MontGov, failed. Millions and millions of Bitcoins were lost. They had to be re-entered into the system to get the numbers back up. But people who had Bitcoins in their wallets lost them. So tons of people lost millions of US dollars worth of Bitcoins. Billions.
How did it get, how did that happen?
I don't know that all the details have been uncovered at this point, but it seems like somebody internally or a bunch of somebody's internally were skimming off the Bitcoin transactions or something like that. Something that Bitcoins weren't supposed to let happen. I think something's been fixed in the Bitcoin algorithm or something like that. But, these are...
This is the main probability of their fail. That's one thing. That's why probably Bitcoin gets back, into the lower amount rather than higher amount.
Well, but the problem with if the Bitcoins go to a lower amount, then all of a sudden it's not profitable for the miners to keep doing it, and the miners stop doing it, and Bitcoin fails.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. Really like a pro-U.S. government type of position, we can look at that is when the economy was really in the dumps several years ago, and the government bailed out the banks. The government stepped in and did what was necessary to keep the economy flowing, to keep dollars flowing. It didn't make financial sense what the government did, but the government backed it with their own dollars. If that makes sense. They bailed out the banks and that kind of stuff. Where Bitcoin doesn't have that luxury. They don't have the U.S. government or any other government behemoth behind it that can step in and say, okay, well, this doesn't make financial sense, but we have a country to run here. So we need to do what it takes to keep the dollars flowing.
Yeah.
So in that way, Bitcoins could be less sustainable. That's kind of what I mean by maybe the government backing is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's
I
very
have
interesting.
One more question before.
Yep.
we can go. How many Bitcoins you could you did basically? If it's not like a secret or something, like you did with this huge.
Oh, like mining with the mining stuff. You can do if you do 400 gigahashes per second, you would probably do
After payment for the
0.8 Bitcoins a month or so.
0.8.
So I would say probably about after depreciation, because the amount keeps going, the difficulty keeps going up, you'd probably make 7 Bitcoins a year. If you ran that stuff for 1 year straight, you'd make 7 Bitcoins. Well, 7 Bitcoins. It's,
just for fun maybe.
well, I mean, 7 Bitcoins times $500 is what? $3,500. Well, if it was $1,000 for that rig, you made $2,500 minus your power bill.
What are these calculators getting you if you
No,
happen
no,
to
no.
win every? Or what are these calculators calculating that?
They're assuming you're in a pool.
Yeah,
You're in one of the pools. So it's basically you are winning often enough. Basically it's a big average.
So logically, if you put like a huge server with the processors. and
Well, you need to get
mine-
something specially made for it anymore. Like a processors and stuff doesn't help. You need to get an ASIC made for this stuff. But so the point is you can invest $1,000 plus your setup time and a power bill and possibly make $3,500. That's if Bitcoins don't go up in value. If they go up in value, maybe you make $8,000.
Yeah, it's just like playing games.
It's a game.
Yeah.
So that's what you can do with that. Now you get a 5 terahash thing.
Yeah.
Well, now you spend $3,200, and the first month with that you'd make about $6,000.
Yeah.
But at today's difficulty, it's a big gamble, but it can be a good investment, or it can be a lousy investment. I mean, I'm guaranteeing you, if you ran those 400 gigahash things for a year, you would have 7 Bitcoins. The question is what are 7 Bitcoins going to be worth a year from now?
Yeah.
Are they worth $2,000 a piece? If so, you're happy. If they're worth 20 cents a piece, you're less than happy because you're out $1,000 plus power bills.
Yeah.
So it's this is not a get rich quick thing. It's more of a very much a speculative
Yes.
thing. But it is interesting the number of places that are accepting Bitcoins. Amazon's thinking about accepting them.
Oh.
Yeah, which is
That'll be good.
yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, so let's move on and look at the homework assignment. It's a nice, healthy discussion.
Yeah. The first time Bitcoin came out, like 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza.
10,000 Bitcoins for a pizza.
For a pizza,
Yeah.
10,000
Yep, I can-
Bitcoins.
Just imagine if you had gotten into Bitcoins back then and just banked them.
And just lay down, you don't need.
It's like, I'm not going to eat a pizza this week. I'll just keep my 10,000 Bitcoins. And
For
I'm going to go and buy a country.
Who knew? Like there was probably like hundreds of those kind of companies.
Well,
like,
but this is no different than the people who invested in Microsoft early on.
The same thing. Yeah.
Looking back on it, hindsight's 2020. Microsoft's made more millionaires than I think any other company in history from their people who invested in Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to keep in mind that in the early days of investing in Microsoft, before computers were the it thing, that probably wasn't any more or less speculative than Bitcoin. So people
It's the same
decided, yeah, it's the same thing. Same thing. Then Microsoft ended up splitting, I don't know, 100 times or something like that, and it kept going right back up, and the rest is history. So but there's for just as for one Microsoft, you can probably find 100 other companies that didn't make it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That people speculated, dumped a bunch of money into the company failed 6 months later. So probably far more people have lost their shirts investing on, in the startup companies than have made the $1 million on Microsoft.
Yeah, same thing with the Apple company. When they go to the big the casino owner,
Mm-hmm.
he refused to buy like for a very very small amount. He could have been now. He says he could have been a billionaire out of that.
Well, you could even take a more recent example. Apple, when they first came out with the iPhone, they took it to Verizon first, and Verizon didn't want the iPhone. Apple didn't make phones. How successful can Apple's iPhone be? Verizon said no. AT&T said yes.
Now AT&T wanted to.
Well, AT&T made a lot of money off it, and now Verizon had to beg to get the iPhone. I guarantee Verizon was going to get a much better deal if they had gotten in bed with Apple to begin with than when they had to come crawling back to Apple and said, please give us the iPhone. But, hey,
Yeah, that's
AT&T won out there, Verizon lost. But what if Verizon had said yes and Apple flopped?
Yeah.
then they would have looked like idiots. Hindsight's always 20/20. Okay, so let's look at our programming assignment. So we were to extend our crawler program such that the game goes on until a user finally loses. The game should start with a map of size 4, then increases by 2 each time. So the first time it should be a map of 4, then 6, then 8, 10, so on and so forth. Winning a cave means you found all of the treasure within the number of moves available. For each cave, a new set of stats should be established. You should be able to accomplish this with our reset method. Okay? Your program should ultimately display the level that the user was on when they finally lost. All right. So, I'm going to go into our code here. Let me just quickly remind myself where we left off. Okay, so right now we have a, actually I need to see something here. Create our cave of size 7, right? Okay, yep. So this should create a cave of size 7. We have 13 moves remaining. We have 2 treasures. So I'm going to go to 0, no treasure. Go back to the beginning. I'll go to 1, no treasure, 0, got a treasure, 0, no treasure, back to the beginning. Okay, I have 7 moves left. So I got to go to 1, then 0, got my treasure. Okay, so at that point I just found my second treasure. I still had 4 moves remaining. Now I have 3 moves remaining because I went back to the beginning, but I have 0 treasure remaining. The game should now detect that I've beaten this cave and take me to the next cave. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to start with a cave of size 2. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new class here called game. Okay? We're going to create a new class. We're going to call this guy game. And the game is going to have private int cur cave size. We'll start off with just that for right now. We'll create our constructor for our game as public game. And we'll say this dot cur cave size is equal to 2. Okay?
You're doing so easy.
I've been doing this a little bit longer than you. You're supposed to work on it for 40 hours on your own, then come into class and say, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's natural. Okay, so a game has a current cave size. Here's the constructor for it. We'll set the cave size to 2. Now, we also need to have the current cave. Private cave, cur cave. we'll go ahead and generate our initial cave. So we'll say this dot curcave is equal to a new cave of size, this dot curcave size. Okay, and that should create our starting cave of size 2. Now we're also going to keep track of a private int cur level. Well, first time around, this dot cur level is going to be equal to 1. This is level 1 cave. Okay. Then we're going to have a method. We'll make it public. Just call it start. And public void start, this method is going to start the process of them going through a cave. So for instance, right now out in driver, we create a cave, then we tell the cave to play. Okay? So inside of game, what will start do? It'll say this dot curcave dot play. Now it's going to do that as long as as long as the current cave has not been beaten. So now we're going to go look at the cave. Here's the play method. The play method said, let's enter the first room. Okay? We go into a room. For room, we enter the room. Now, eventually what happens? Eventually we either A, run out of stuff, in which case we should fail, or we collect all our treasures inside of the total number of rooms, and we do what? Should go on to the next map. So we need to have some way for a cave to know when it was completely explored.
Yeah.
That make sense? So what I'm going to do here.
The main idea was finding all the treasures and then passing to another
Correct.
level. Yeah. So
what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the enter method to return a Boolean.
Okay.
So we're going to have that guy return a Boolean. It's going to create a bunch of errors for us, because now every single time we call enter, we have to return that. Okay, so where am I entering a cave? Well, here's a place where I'm entering a cave. This goes back to the beginning. Actually, let me think about this. Do I want to make it return a Boolean?
Why don't we just make another method that is a Boolean and then stick it in there somewhere?
Well, making this return a Boolean would be,
Faster.
well, I think would be just as. Let me look at our stats real quick.
We can just minus font treasure.
Let me leave it as void right now. If I say go back to the beginning, that's in the get input, right? This guy returns a -2. Okay, so we're telling rooms about the cave in our version. Okay, fine. So a room already knows about the cave. So what we're going to do is we're going to build into cave a private Boolean completed. Okay, and in the constructor for our cave, we're going to say this dot completed is equal to false. This particular cave has not been completed. Okay? Now, we're going to say let's do this. Public void set complete, or let's see. Let's just do cave complete. This dot completed is equal to true. So once this cave is complete, we will say true here.
Okay, where is it in the?
This is inside cave. We've decided that caves know whether they've been completed or not. When a cave first comes into existence, it's not been completed. Here, we're going to have the ability for somebody else, like a room, to tell a cave that it's been completed. Okay? Because rooms have access to the cave in our current code. So we'll go back into room. Now, where we find whether or not we have treasure is down here. If this room has treasure, we're going to find the treasure. We'll print out a pot of gold because we just saw the pot of gold, but we found it. And then we'll say this dot has treasure is false. In case we ever return to this room, we won't show treasure. But if we just picked up a treasure, we can now ask, was this the last treasure? That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we can say if stats dot get treasure found is equal to stats dot treasure count, because that's how we did the yep. So if the treasure we have found is equal to the total treasure that should have been there, we are done with this cave. So we'll say this dot the cave dot cave complete. So that will complete the cave. And then we want to end. Correct? We want this cave to be done. We want to get out of this method. Be done with this this enter method.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go ahead and return. Okay. So as soon as we have finished, as soon as we've collected our last treasure, we're here. Now, this is our game over screen.
Yeah, just copy and paste that one.
Okay. So that's our game over screen. Now what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back to our cave. Our cave is going to have the completed value set. So we need to give ourselves a getter for that. Public Boolean is cave complete. Return this dot completed. So we'll give ourselves a little helper method that allows somebody else who knows about the cave to ask the cave, are you complete? Okay. So now we'll go back to game. In game, we're going to start. We'll tell the game to start. And what does that do? It takes the current cave and says, let's play. Now I'm going to go right after that. This line blocks. I will not get to this line here until this line here finishes. So when I finally get past that line, now I can ask the question, if this dot cur cave dot is cave completed, we have a winner, so we're going to make the next cave. I'll go ahead and print that out. System.out.println winner. And that's all we'll say right now.
Mm-hmm.
Else, system.out.println loser. Make sense? Okay. Now we'll go back to our driver. Instead of creating a cave here, we're going to create a game. So the game is equal to a new game. And then we'll say the game dot start. Now remember, when we first create a game, this should create a game with 2 rooms. So current cave size is 2. My current level is 1. It'll create that first cave with a cave size of 2. And keep in mind, we could have a winner right off the bat in the event that we had 0 treasures. So we might decide we want to have at least 1 treasure in a cave, but let's not worry about that right now. Okay, so when we say start, we're going to play this cave. And as soon as this ends, why would it end? If we go into cave, we go into play. Play calls the first room's enter method. That enter method eventually ends.
Can you go back to game first, Lisa? Got it. Thanks.
Okay. So let's go ahead and let's run this. This should create us a room with, well, a cave with 2 rooms in it. Am I not getting a cave with 2 rooms in it? The game. Here's my game. Set these 2 values. Create my new cave with cur cave size, which should be 2. Then start. We'll set the cave. Tell the cave to play.
Mine works, but it goes right to winner.
Well, yeah, because you probably had 0 treasures in the first cave.
Easy.
Cur cave. Do I just not have my... Oh, okay, good. Yeah, some Eclipse is just hiccuping on me. Because I basically just wrote a hello world program that didn't work. So let's let Eclipse relax for a second. We'll restart it. Be good to go. He's really upset.
Oh, yours. Okay.
I'm sure be fine momentarily. Okay. Now let's make sure this prints out blah to the screen. And it does. Good. So we'll take that line out. And then we should be able to uncomment these. Okay, oh, we do have one treasure in this cave, so we've lucked out. So there's no treasure in this first room, so I'll go ahead and hit 0. Oh, that's another thing, Lauren. You could either have, you may have had 0 treasures, or you had 1 treasure in the first room.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hit 0 to go into the 1 exit. We found our treasure, says winner. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. As opposed to, let's run this one more time. I'm going to just keep hitting back. Now we're a loser. I never actually progressed through the cave. I just kept going back to the beginning, never finding the treasure, so proved that we could lose. Okay? So when we get out to here, this tells us whether we were a winner or a loser. Okay? Now, in the event that we were a loser, you should be able to accomplish, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I said the first map should be size 4, not 2. We'll fix that. Winning a cave means that you found all the treasures within the number available for each cave, a new set of stats. Your program should ultimately display the level that the user was on when they finally lost. Okay, got it. So, we're going to change our current cave size to 4 instead of 2. When we lose, system.out.println you
are in level.
Well, here. You failed level, we'll say this dot cur level. So that's the level we were on when we failed. Okay? Otherwise, we're going to say winner and when we win, we increase our cave level, or our level. So cur level plus plus. So we're going to say generating level this dot cur level. And then we actually need to generate that level. Well, our cur cave size is 4. So we're going to say this dot cur cave size is equal to this dot cur cave size plus 2, because it goes up by 2 each time, right? Then we'll say this dot cur cave is equal to a new cave, this dot cur cave size. And finally, how do we start a cave? How do we start the game? Well, we play that cave. So I'm going to say this dot start. I'll recursively call this method, because that's how we start the next cave.
Did you say you didn't want to reset the stats, or did you want it to?
It will reset the stats automatically because we're inside cave. Cave resets the stats.
Oh.
We just need to make sure that we take anything we needed from the stats before we reset them. Okay, so a game starts. So we take the current cave, we play it. As soon as we're done playing, we've either won or we've lost. If the cave was complete, we say 1, increment the current level, say we're generating the next level, level 2. Then we up the number of rooms that should be in the next cave by 2. Then we actually create the new cave to be that new room size, which would reset the stats. And then we call this method again. What does this method do? It calls play on the current cave. Otherwise, we call him a big fat loser. Actually, we don't actually say big fat. We'll say big fat now. So big fat loser, you failed level, whatever the current level is. Make sense? I could say big fat loser because I'm fatter than all of you. You agree with that? You think I'm fatter than you?
No, I'm not.
You don't think I'm fatter than you? Because I definitely am. Maybe this is like the first problem that you're having with logic. All right. So we'll go ahead and run this again. The first room should now have a size of 4. All right. So we have 7 rooms remaining, 3 treasures. Okay. Well, we already found our first one. So we'll go to exit 0. Oh, no treasures in this one. Got our next treasure. No treasures in this one. Gotta go to 0. Okay, got it. Actually, hold on, I just found it. Oh. Oh, hold on, I'm already in the next level. I already won. I just missed it, scrolled by. So I won, generating level 2, moves remaining. Okay, so I have 3 pots of gold left. Yeah, I don't even remember where I've been now. Okay, so let's go to 1, 1, 0, back 1, 0, back 1. Ay. Moves remaining 3, 1 treasure remaining. Ay.
Yeah.
Failed on level 4. I zigged when I should have zagged. I had one treasure remaining on my last one. Okay. So does that answer the homework? It does. But something I'm going to do here, just for clarity's sake, because there were several times there where we didn't know that if we had won or not. So I'm going to come back into our code. After this is done, I'm going to clear the screen. So I'm going to say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 80, I plus plus, system.out.println. I'll just print out the empty string.
A.
Yeah, I mean, just enough to press enter enough times to clear off the screen. And then I'll do a little system.out.println.
So it's not an actual like clearing screen command. It's just making a bunch of space.
Yeah, there might actually be an actual screen clear command, but I don't know off the top of my head. This will do what we need it to do. I'm just pressing enter 80 times. That should get everything scrolled off the screen so we can see new stuff. So I'm going to do that inside of game after each cave play. So I'll run this again. Moves remaining is 7. Okay, we got one of our treasures already. We got another treasure already. Okay, now we got to go back to the beginning. Okay, good. So there's our, now you can tell that we won. So winner, generating level 2, 11 rooms remaining. We already got one pot of gold. We got another pot of gold. Oh, I already won again. Okay. Generating level 3. 5 treasures. 15 moves. There's 1 treasure. 2 treasures. 3 treasures. 4 treasures. 5 treasures. Got them all. Level 4. Oh man, I'm going into savant mode here. This is where we failed last time, Habib. We gotta beat this one, right? We failed on level 4 last time. Okay. 8 treasures remaining. Got 1 of them. 2 of them. 3 of them. 4 of them. We have 5 of them. Okay, 3 treasures left. 1. Then we're gonna go to 1. 2 treasures left. 5 rooms remaining. I think I need to go over here. Yes. Level 5. This is getting hard. Barely won that one. All right, moves remain. Oh, only 5 treasures. Jeez, we already got 1 of them. 2 of them.
This game is hard to like visualize in your head when you're just seeing text.
I know, that's what's awesome about it. And actually, that's very similar to MUDs. Remember 2 classes ago we did the paper on MUDs, multi-user dungeons?
Yeah.
It was really like that. When you got into playing those initially, you're like, you don't know where things are. Then all of a sudden you can like visualize the entire place, like where you are and where you need to be. Yeah, it's kind of messed up actually. All right, 3 treasures left. Two treasures left. 1 treasure left. Oh, what happened? What happened?
What?
Stack overflow maybe?
Where? How? Why?
Level 6.
Yeah, when it was trying to generate level 6, that must have been in my see, we had this in one other class. Here in the constructor for a cave, we just keep building our cave over and over again. I'm guessing that we must have had a cave that generated too many rooms, and we ran out of stack space. So the way we can handle that is...
There's actually size of stacks, how many we can use.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just had bad luck, because, I mean, in this loop, we tried to generate a cave of size 6, and then if it wasn't exactly size 6, we do it again. Well, there's nothing here that says we couldn't have a cave of size 4 million. If just the dice roll, happened, and we just kept, birthing new rooms. So I think what we need to do is inside of room. We gotta do it in the constructor, I think. We're gonna say if stats dot get max depth. Oh wait, hold on. That gets calculated. Well, no, we calculate the number of rooms we visited, don't we? Stats dot get rooms. Oh, room count. If stats room count is greater than, let's just do that. We're going to ask here if stats room count is greater than, actually, let's say if it's less than or equal to the total rooms that are allowed in this guy. So what we need to do is inside of cave, when we reset the stats, we need to say inside stats we need to keep track of max rooms. And then we're going to have a public static void set max rooms int max, and we'll set max rooms equal to max. Then we'll also have a public static int get max rooms. This guy will return max rooms. Okay, so we've added to our stats a way of keeping track of the current maximum rooms and getting the maximum rooms. That way, when we come into a cave and we're building our cave, we'll say stats dot set max rooms to number of rooms, the value that was passed into the constructor for our cave. So if it's 6, which is where we just failed, stats will keep track of that the maximum number of rooms that is allowed is 6. Now, as rooms are being created then, we can ask the question, if stats room count is less than or equal to stats.get max rooms, then we'll go ahead and allow him to create more exits. Otherwise, we're going to let this guy fail, possibly tie the max number of rooms, but otherwise, at least we won't get too out of control before we try again. This makes sense? So stats, we just wrote, we created one new variable, max rooms, and then created 2, a setter and a getter for it. So now we should be able to, I'm just going to test this real quick. We're going to stress test this. I'm going to go ahead and say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 10,000, I plus plus, new cave, 6. So this will call the constructor for cave 10,000 times, trying to create a cave of size 6. Each time through, it's going to keep creating caves until it finally gets one that's size 6. So the hope is if we can generate a cave of size 6 10,000 times without having a Stack Overflow, then we are probably protecting ourselves now. There's our here. Oh, we need to say done. There's here done. Here done. Okay, seems like we'll do it 100,000 times. I think we've probably fixed the problem. It should take longer.
So people could be waiting in the game for it to generate stuff.
Well, we're generating maps. So what we're gonna do the second half is we're gonna talk about outputting into a map format. We're gonna talk about it, but then I'm gonna start teaching about threads because your homework is gonna be the map side of things. Okay. In any case, I think we'll do it 10 times for size 60. I think it'll finish this one. There we go. How about 10 times for size 600? Oh, it did finish. You got, man, can you imagine beating a size 600 cave this game? Epic.
You probably need to be genius.
I don't even think that'll help. I don't think that'll. I think you probably have to be mapping it out. You have to be mapping it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so questions about the homework, question about the Bitcoin stuff we talked about, any of that crap?
Easy.
All right, so let's take about 15 minutes, 17 minutes. We'll come back at 8:15 and we'll pick up where we left off.